tell us where you were on that day when you learned?
I was home with my mother, my sister, and my brother Ben.
And the White House called?
No, we did not get a presidential call.
So how did you learn of what had happened?
Well, I'll preface it a bit with before they left, before Mickey, Jay, and Andy left. Jay had said to us to tell my mother that if they weren't back at a certain hour, and given her a telephone tree, list of phone numbers that we should start calling. So when they weren't back, we began to make the call. It was not until the next day that we were officially informed that they were missing, because they weren't able to be tracked anywhere.
And David Goodman, for those viewers and listeners who are younger, who weren't alive back in 1964, could you talk about how big of a story this was nationwide, the impact it had on the country? I mean, some historians have said 1964 was a year that changed America.
Yeah, well, I was 17 years old. I had just graduated from high school. I mean, my grandfather used to say, if you have a question, ask a 17-year-old, they know everything. Well, I mean, turns out I didn't know very much at all. But I learned a lot quickly in a way that I wouldn't wish on anybody. And the story was huge. It was a huge story. I've been told that for the 44 days they were missing, it was the most watched and listened to and read about story internationally, even, because as I subsequently read, the rest of the world viewed the United States, understandably, as the leading world democracy, and could not believe that in many of our states we had policemen murdering civilians, and with a history of getting away with it in certain instances, white policemen and white people murdering black people in certain states. And it was a shock. And this event was kind of a level of, a secondary level of shocks to me and to the nation, to realize that white people could also be murdered because of black people, which had almost never happened before. So it was an international story. It was a national story. And a really sad part of the story, in my opinion, or the way I feel, is that it took two white kids to wake up white America to what was going on in our country.
I just visited your house where you grew up, where after you learned of the murder of your brother and James Chaney and Mickey Schwerner, Martin Luther King and Coretta Scott King came to pay condolences to your family.
Yeah, we were really honored. It was after they found the bodies, so Dr. King and Coretta King came to express their deep regrets, and it was quite an event for me personally.
Angela Lewis, you were not born yet. How did you learn the story of your father? You were born 10 days after James Chaney. After 10 days, when were you born, Angela?
I was born June the 11th of '64, and I was actually just 11 days old, 10 days old.
So how did you come to understand, as you grew up, what happened to your dad?
Mainly through reading for myself and through talking to my grandmother, my father's mother, and, had a couple of aunts that would tell me bits and pieces, but I was not privileged to a lot of information about my father.
So your mother for many years did not tell you what had happened?
No.
So talk about, in learning for yourself and talking to your grandmother, how that shaped you and your work now around voting rights and around racial equality. You live in Meridian, Mississippi.
Well, it gives me a great appreciation for not only the sacrifice that my father made, but others as well, and it gives me the same motivation and desire to want to help, you know, young people and to just try to make people's lives better. So mostly it's just an appreciation, and I think I share the same passion that my father did when it comes to just wanting to help people to live a better life.
Julia Chaney Moss, I wanted to ask you the long period of time before anybody was found guilty of these murders. Could you talk about that and the impact that finally there was a conviction in the case?
Well, it was a terrifically long period of time, and life goes on. You continue to live even when there is an absence in your life, a present absence in your life. You continue to live. And once there was, we had no idea until we were called and asked and given information about the pending pursuit of indictment of Preacher Killen. Prior to that, there seemed to have been nothing, really occurring. Once that happened, again, because there was no precedence, nothing had happened before of this nature, seriously, and it was a little difficult to rejoice or be happy about this, but to hear this with temerity and to just be okay and kind of in waiting to see how this would unfold and what would occur.